The Chronicles of Narnia, The Silver Chair by C.S. Lewis, Chapter 12, The Queen of Underland. Two Earthmen entered, but instead of advancing into the room, they placed themselves on one side of the door and bowed deeply. They were followed immediately by the last person whom anyone expected or wished to see, the Lady of the Green Kirtle, the Queen of Underland. She stood dead still in the doorway, and they could see her eyes moving as she took in the whole situation. The three strangers, the silver chair destroyed, and the prince free, with his sword in his hand. She turned very white, but Joel thought it was the sort of whiteness that comes over some people's faces when not they are frightened, but when they are angry. For the moment the witch fixed her eyes on the prince, there was murder in them. Then she seemed to change her mind. "Leave us," she said to the two Earthmen, "and let none disturb us as till I call, on the pain of death." The gnomes paddled away obediently, and the witch queen shut and locked the door. "How now, my lord prince," she said, "has your knightly fit not yet come upon you, or is it over so soon? Why stand you here unbound? Who are these aliens, and what is it they have destroyed to the chair which was your only safety?" Prince Brilliant shivered as she spoke to him, and no wonder. It's not very easy to throw off in half an hour an enchantment which has made one a slave for 10 years. Then, speaking with great effort, he said, "Madam, there will be no more need of that chair, and you, who have told me 100 times how deeply you have pitied for me the sorceries by which I was bound, will doubtless hear with joy that they are now ended for ever. There it was, it seems, that some small error in your ladyship's way of treating them. These, my true friends, have delivered me. I am now in my right mind, and there are two things I will say to you. First, as for your ladyship's design of putting me at the head of an army of earthmen so that I may break out into the overworld and there, main force, make myself king over some nation that never did me wrong, murdering their natural lords and holding me their throne as bloody for and triumph, now that I know myself I do utterly abhor and renounce that as plain villainy. And second, I am the king's son of Narnia, Rilian, the only child of Caspian, 10th of that name, whom some call Caspian the Seafarer. Therefore, madam, it is my purpose, as it is to my duty, to depart suddenly from your highness's court to my own country. Please it you grant me and my friends safe conduct and a guide through your dark realm." Now the witch said nothing at all, but moved gently across the room, always keeping her face and eyes steadily towards the prince. When she had come to a little ark set in the wall not far from the fireplace, she opened it and took out a handful of green powder. This she threw on the fire. It did not blaze much, but a very sweet and drowsy smell came from it. And although the conversation which followed, that smell grew stronger and filled the room, it made it harder to think. Secondly, she took up a musical instrument rather like a mandolin. She began to play it with her fingers, a steady monotonous strumming that you didn't notice after a few minutes. But the less you noticed it, the more it got into your brain and into your blood. This also made it hard to think. After she had thrummed for a time, and the sweet smell was now strong, she began speaking in a sweet, quiet voice. "Narnia," she said, "Narnia, I have often heard your lordship utter that name in your ravings. Dear prince, you are very sick. There is no land called Narnia." "Yes, there is, though, ma'am," said Puddleglum. "You shall see. I happen to have lived there all my life." "Indeed," said the witch. "Tell me, I pray you, where that country is." "Up there," said Puddleglum, stoutly, pointing overhead. "I don't know exactly where." "How?" said the Queen, with a kind, soft, musical laugh. "Is there a country up among the stones and the mortar of the roof?" "No," said Puddleglum, struggling a little to get his breath. "It's in the overworld." "And what, or where, pray, is this, how do you call it, overworld?" "Oh, don't be so silly," said Scrub, who was fighting hard against the enchantment of the sweet smell and the thrumming. "As if you don't know. It's up above. How where you can see the sky and the sun and the stars. Why, you've been there yourself. We met you there." "I cry a little mercy for a little brother," laughed the witch. You couldn't have heard a lovelier laugh. "I have no memory of that meeting, but we often meet our friends in strange places when we dream, and unless it all dreamed alike, you must not ask them to remember it." "Madam," said the prince sternly, "I have already told your grace that I am the king's son of Narnia." "And shall that be, dear friend?" said the witch in a soothing voice, as if she was a humouring child. "Shalt the king of many imagined lands in thy fancies?" "We've been there too," snapped Jill. She was very angry because she could feel the enchantment getting hold of her every moment, but of course the very fact that she could still feel it showed that it had not fully worked. "And thou art Queen of Narnia too, I doubted," Not a pretty one, said the witch in the same coaxing, self-half-mocking tone. I'm nothing of the sort, said Joel, stamping her foot. We come from another world. Why, this is a prettier game than the other, said the witch. Tell us, little maid, where's this other world? What ships and chariots go between it and ours? Of course, a lot of things darted into Joel's head at once. Experiment house, Adela Pennyfeather, her own home, radio sets, cinemas, cars, airplanes, ration books, and queues, but they seemed dim and far away. Thrum, 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 went the strings of the witch's instrument. Joel couldn't remember the names of the things in our world, and at this time it didn't come into her head that she was being enchanted, for now the magic was in its full strength. And of course, the more enchanted you get, the more certain you feel that you are not enchanted at all. She found herself saying, at the moment it was relief to say, No, I suppose that world must be all a dream. Yes, it is all a dream, said the witch, always thrumming. Yes, all a dream, said Joel. There never was such a world, said the witch. No, said Joel to Scrub, never was such a world. There never was any world but mine, said the witch. There never was any world but yours, said they. Puddlegum was still fighting hard. I don't know rightly what you mean by a world, he said, talking like a man who hasn't enough air, but you can play that fiddle till your fingers drop off, and still you won't make me forget Narnia, and the whole overworld too. We will never see it again, I shouldn't wonder. You may have blotted it out and turned it dark like this, for all I know. Nothing more likely. But I know I was there once. I've seen the sky full of stars. I've seen the sun coming up out of the sea in the morning and sinking behind the mountains at night. I've seen him come up in the midday sky when I didn't look at him for brightness. Puddlegum's words had a very rousing effect. The other three all breathed again and looked at one another like people nearly awaked. Why, there it is, said Prince. Of course, the blessing Aslan upon his honest Master Wiggle. We have all been dreaming these last few minutes. How could we have forgotten it? Of course we have all seen the sun. By Jove, so have we, said Scrub. Good for you, Puddlegum. You're the only one of us with any sense, I do believe. Then came the witch's voice, cooing softly like the voice of a wood pigeon from the high elms in an old garden at 3 o'clock in the middle of a sleepy summer afternoon, and it said, What is this sun you all speak of? Do you mean anything by the word? Yes, we jolly well do, said Scrub. Can you tell me what it's like? Asked the witch. Thrum, 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 went the strings. Please at your grace, said the prince, very coldly and politely. You see that lamp? It is round and yellow, and gives light to the whole room, and it hangeth moreover from the roof. Now that thing which we call the sun is like the lamp, only greater and brighter. It giveth light to the whole overworld, and hangeth in the sky. Hangeth from what, my lord? Asked the witch, and then, while they were all thinking how to answer her, she added with another of her soft, slow laughs, You see, when you try to think out clearly what the sun is, you cannot tell me. You can only tell me it is like a lamp. Your sun is a dream, and there is nothing in the dream that has got copied from the lamp. The lamp is the real thing. The sun is but a tale, a children's story. Yes, I see now, said Joel in a very hopeless tone. It must be so. And while she said this, it seemed to her to be very good sense. Slowly and gravely the witch repeated, There is no sun. And they all said nothing. She repeated in a softer and deeper voice, There is no sun. After a pause, and after a struggle in their minds, all four of them said it all together, You are right, there is no sun. It was such a relief to give in and say it. There was never a sun, said the witch. No, there was never a sun, said the witch and the Marsh Wiggle and the children. For the last few minutes Jill had been feeling that there was something she must remember at all costs, and now she did, but it was dreadfully hard to say it. She felt as if huge weights were laid on her lips, and at last, with an effort that seemed to take all good out of her, she said, There's Aslan. Aslan, said the witch, quickening ever so slightly the pace of her drumming. What a pretty name! What does it mean? He is the great lion who called us out of our own world, said Scrub, and sent us to this world to find Prince Rilian. What is a lion? Asked the witch. Oh, hang it all, said Scrub. Don't you know? How can we describe it to her? Have you ever seen a cat? Surely, said the queen. I love cats. Well, a lion is a little bit, mind you, like a huge cat, with a mane. At least it's not like a horse's mane, you know. It's more like a judge's wing, and it's yellow and terrifically strong." The witch shook her head. "I see," she said, "that we should do no better with your lion, as you call it, than we did with your son. You have seen lambs, and so you imagined a bigger and better lamb and called it the sun. You've seen cats, and now you want a bigger and better cat, and it's to be called a lion. Well, it's a pretty make-believe, though. To say the truth, it would suit you all better if you were younger. And look how you can put nothing into your make-believe without copying it from the real world, this world of mine, which is the only world. But even you children are too old for such play. As for you, my lord prince, what art a man full grown? Fie upon you! Are you not ashamed of such toys? Come, all of you. Put away these childish tricks. I have work for you all in the real world. There is no Narnia, no overworld, no sky, no sun, no Aslan. And now to bed all, and let us begin a wiser life tomorrow. But first to bed, to sleep, deep sleep, soft pillow, sleep without foolish dreams." The prince and the two children were standing with their heads hung down, their cheeks flushed, their eyes half closed, the strength all gone from them, their enchantment almost complete. But Puddlegum, desperately gathering all his strength, walked over to the fire. Then he did a very brave thing. He knew it wouldn't hurt him quite as much as it would hurt a human, for his feet, which were bare, were webbed and hard and cold-blooded like a duck's. But he knew it would hurt him badly enough, and so it did. With his bare foot he stamped on the fire, grinding a large part of it into the ashes onto the flat hearth. There were three things that happened at once. First, the sweet heavy smell grew very much less, for the whole fire had not been put out. A good bit had, but that remained smelly and very large of burnt marsh wiggle, which is not at all an enchanting smell. This instantly made everyone's brain far clearer. The prince and the children held up their hands again and opened their eyes. Secondly, the witch, in a loud, terrible voice, utterly different from the sweet tone she had been using until now, called out, "What are you doing? Dare to touch my fire again, mud filth, and I'll turn the blood into fire inside your veins." Thirdly, the pen itself made Puddlegum's head for a moment perfectly clear, and he knew exactly what he really thought. There's nothing like a good shock of pen for dissolving certain kinds of magic. "One word, ma'am," he said, coming forward from the fire, limping because of the pen. "One word. All you've been saying is quite right, I shouldn't wonder. From a chap who've always liked to know the worst, and then put on the best face I can on it. So I wouldn't deny what you said. But there's one more thing to be said, even so. Suppose you have only dreamed or made up all those things, trees and grass and sun and moon and stars and Aslan himself. Suppose we have. Then all I can say is that, in that case, the made-up things seem a good deal more important than the real ones. Suppose this black pit of a kingdom of yours is the only world. Well, it strikes me as a pretty poor one, and that's a funny thing, when you come up to think of it. We're just babies making up a game, if you're right. But four babies playing a game can make a play world which licks your own real world hollow. That's why I'm going to stand by the play world. I'm on Aslan's side, even if there isn't any Aslan to lead it. I'm going to live as like a Narnian as I can, even if there isn't any Narnia. So, thanking you kindly for our supper, if these two gentlemen and young lady are ready, we're leaving your court at once and setting out into the dark to spend our lives looking for the overland. Not that our lives will be very long, I should think. That's a small loss if the world's as dull as the place you say." "Oh, hurrah! Good old Puddlegum!" cried Scrub and Joel. But Prince shouted suddenly, "Where? Look to the witch!" And they did look, and their hair nearly stood on end. The instrument dropped from her hands. Her arms appeared to be fastened to her sides. Her legs were intertwined to each other, and her feet had disappeared. The long green train of her skirt thickened and grew solid, and seemed to be in all one piece with the writhing green pillar of her interlocked legs, and that writhing green pillar was curving and swaying as if it had no joints, or else were all joints. Her head was thrown far back, and her nose grew longer and longer. Every part of her face seemed to disappear except her eyes. Huge flaming eyes were they now, without brows or lashes. All this takes time to write down, and it happened so quickly that there was just only time to see it. Long before there was nothing to do anything. The change was complete, and the great serpent which the witch had become, green and poison, as thick as Jill's waist, had flung 2 or 3 coils of its loathsome body round the prince's legs. Quick as lightning the other loop darted around, intertwining to its pinion and sword arm into his side. But the prince was just in time. He raised his arms and got them clear. The living knot closed only around his chest, ready to crack his ribs like firewood when it drew tight. The prince caught the creature's neck in his left hand, trying to squeeze it till it choked. It held its face, if you could call it a face, about 5 inches from its own. The forked tongue flickered horribly in and out, and it could not reach him. With his right hand he drew back his sword for the strongest blow he could give. Meanwhile Scrub and Puddlegum had drawn their weapons and rushed to his aid. All three blows fell at once. Scrub's, which was not even pierced, and the scales did no good. On the body of the snake the blows Prince's hand, but the Prince's own blow and Puddlegum's both on his cheek. Even that did not quite kill it, though it began to loosen its hold on Rillian's legs and chest. With repeated blows they hacked off its head. The horrible thing went on coiling and moving like a bit wire long after it had died, and the floor, as you imagine, was a nasty mess. The Prince, when he had breath, said, "Gentlemen, I thank you." The three conquerors stood staring at one another and panting, without another word, for a long time. Jarlath very wisely sat down and was keeping quiet. She was saying to herself, "I do hope I don't faint or blub or do anything idiotic. My royal mother is ravaged. My royal mother is avenged," said William presently. "This is undoubtedly the same whom I pursued in my vein by the fountain of the forest of Narnia so many years ago. All these years I have been the slave of my mother's slayer, yet I am glad, gentlemen, that the fowl which took her serpent form at last. It would not have suited her well, either with my heart or with my honour, to have slain a woman, but look to the lady," he meant Jill. "I'm all right, thanks," said she. "Damsel," said the Prince, bowing to her, "you are of a high courage, therefore I doubt not you are to come a noble blood in your own world. But come, friends, here is some wine left. Let us refresh ourselves, and each pledge his fellows. After that, to our plans." "A jolly good idea, sir," said Scrub.